Good evening and welcome to the Marian Minor Cook Athenaeum. I am Abe Vasquez, one of your fellows for this year. Coming from a rich history of bat and ball games with descriptive names such as round ball, bass ball, and my favorite, stool ball, the baseball that we know today officially began in 1846 in New Jersey when the New York Nine demolished the Knickerbockers 23-1 in 4 innings. Although the names may have already peaked nearly 200 years ago, the game itself would continue to develop as it became a crucial part of American culture and spread to the wider world in the subsequent centuries. Through the contributions and sacrifices of trailblazing integrationists such as Jackie Robinson and Chico Carrasquel, the sport also became a platform for positive social change and an indicator of more to come. Now, professional baseball is played in over 100 nations, and Major League Baseball itself produces nearly $10 billion in revenue annually. This value is thanks to, in no small part, to our very own LA Dodgers, who are worth more than $3.4 billion, placing them as the second wealthiest team internationally. We don't talk about first place. Reflecting on the business and life of professional baseball, we are joined tonight by Scott Akasaki, Emilee Fragapane, and Michael Voltmer. Following his graduation from CMC in 1998, Scott became the first Asian American to serve as Senior Director of Team Travel for the MLB, with our very own LA Dodgers. Over the course of 22 seasons, Scott's work has taken him all over the world and brought him recognitions such as the Donald Davidson Traveling Secretary of the Year Award and at the Japanese American National Museum. Having graduated from Sonoma State University and UC Santa Barbara, Emilee Fragapane quickly moved on to working for the Dodgers, going from an operations intern to the director of integrative baseball performance. During her 11 seasons for the Dodgers, she has been responsible for using biomechanical data and analytics to better the team both on and off the field. A graduate of the University of Louisville and the University of Virginia, Michael Voltmer has spent 8 seasons with the Dodgers, where he's been the director of baseball strategy and information. Michael works on coaching the coaches by providing them with strategy and roster data. Whether you're in the nosebleeds or behind home plate, tonight you'll have a front row seat to the behind-the-scenes world of professional baseball. But before welcoming our speakers, we will review our rules and guidelines. We ask that cell phones be silenced and put away, and remind you that video and audio recordings by the audience are strictly prohibited. Per the college's health and safety guidelines, wearing masks while not eating or drinking is highly encouraged. At the end of tonight's presentation, there will be some time for audience Q&A. With that in mind, please welcome to the AF tonight's starting lineup, Scott Akasaki, Emilee Fragapane, and Michael Voltmer. It's time for Dodger baseball. Always wanted to say that.
Thank you very much for having us here today. Claremont McKenna College. I don't think I've ever told my colleagues this, but it's an easy school academically. I graduated second in my class behind the valedictorian. The valedictorian, of course, had the best grades, right? So she went first, and me, with the last name Akasaki, I was first alphabetically. So on the date of graduation, I did graduate second. I've been waiting since 1998 to tell that joke. At any rate, so I had an opportunity today to come in the afternoon to speak to some of the baseball and softball team members about potentially a career in sports. And I wanted to put together this panel with my colleagues to not talk necessarily about a career in sports, but sort of in a broader aspect, to pursue something that you really enjoy in life. And one of the things that I think about often is I think about my dad. And when I was a little boy, at the breakfast table, my father would bring his LA Times sports page and he would read it while we ate breakfast every day. And so when I was sitting in my dorm room, like many of you do, I tried to figure out what did I want to do with my career? What direction did I want to go? So I figured out that I didn't necessarily want to go to law school, which I was a government and legal studies major here. I wanted to get paid to read the sports page. That was my goal, right? And so I started to think about how I was going to do that. And my dad didn't own a sports team. I didn't know anybody. So the way that I thought that I would get paid to read the sports page, and newspapers are now, they've come and gone, right? So now I get paid to read the internet. But I wanted to figure out a way into the game. And how I was going to do that was I was going to possess or try to gain some type of knowledge that nobody else had. So back then, there were 3 Japanese players, Hideo Nomo, Hideki Irabu, and a minor league pitcher named Max Suzuki. And when I was a senior here at CMC, I applied for a fellowship to study a topic of my choice in Asia. Luckily enough, I was selected. And so for the entire year in 1999, I studied Japanese, of course, but specifically Japanese baseball, high school baseball, college baseball, the pro game, what spring training was like, the draft. I wanted to become the most informed person who spoke English, who knew about Japanese baseball, and that was my goal. And so once I had that goal in mind, then I started to contact all the teams. And so luckily enough for me, the team that hired me was the hometown team, the Los Angeles Dodgers. So so that's like the real quick and dirty my background. I'll get into sort of what I do on a daily basis, but I wanted to ask Emilee and Michael their path. Like when you guys were in your dorm room, your junior and senior years, how did you get from that to where you are now? Like, what was your major? What did you want to do initially? Like, I wanted to become a lawyer, sort of, but I didn't become a lawyer, right? So, Emilee, we want to lead off and talk to us about your start.
Sure, thanks, Scott. First off, appreciate being here tonight. It's really awesome to be able to talk to you all. Just to kind of answer Scott's question, so my academic background quite a while ago now is in econometrics, econ, and statistics. So I originally went into college in a completely unrelated field. I was in political science, anthropology, just kind of enjoyed seeing how things worked, understanding people, and by my sophomore, junior year, I realized the part of it that I really enjoyed was the part that you can kind of apply math to and get a little bit more objective answers on. And so I ended up transitioning into economics and statistics, which kind of allowed me to answer a lot of those same questions, but in a more objective manner. And so at that point, junior, senior year, I've always been drawn to sports, but at that point didn't necessarily know if it was going to be a feasible path for me. Full disclosure, not a lot of women in baseball or sports in general. And so my intention at the time was to go into, some sort of field that was enjoyable, which, used numbers, used the economic statistic skills that I'd been acquiring. So I went to Sonoma State, so wine business, things like that was of interest. It was a much more obvious, feasible field to get into. But kind of always had my eye and heart, set on if I could ever get into sports, I would love to. And so for me, the appeal of sports has always been, something that I think people figure out once they leave college, so maybe ahead of you at this point, is it's hard to find the bonded camaraderie of a group as you go into the rest of the world, to the rest of your life. And that's something that I think sports really features, and it's one of the few places as an adult for the rest of your life, that you can find that, where you become bonded by emotional highs and emotional lows. And that's something that was really appealing to me. And I was lucky enough to be able to find an internship with the Dodgers. Won't necessarily go into all my background just yet, but it predated us having an analytics department with the Dodgers. So it was their very first foray into having an analytics intern of any kind. And so out of undergrad, I basically found this job online, applied, sent in my research papers, went through the process, and became the first person doing analytics for the Los Angeles Dodgers, to speak of. And so I kind of found my home there with that internship. I did leave for a year to finish grad school, also in economics and statistics, and then came back on board full time after I was done with that, and I've been there ever since. So.
Yeah, for my background, baseball was always the goal. Working in baseball was my goal, it was my passion. I remember contemplating my college decision and what I wanted to major in, and I'm in high school, and I did homework on every general manager and pretty much any baseball executive that you could find, and found all their majors, where they went to school, did they have a graduate degree, and tried to use that as my guiding light as to what could I do, what can I emulate in order to break into the game. And it's kind of funny looking back on it, because that was probably 2009 or so, and the landscape of general managers now looks completely different from what it did back then. I went to Louisville to study sport management, and actually quickly learned that that probably wasn't going to be my best way of breaking into the game. I needed something that was more quantitative, and I had always enjoyed math and science and statistics, and I took an intro to economics class, microeconomics, and really enjoyed it, and I ended up switching my major. And I think I'm thankful that I did that, because having read Moneyball, that was incredibly influential on what I wanted to do. And kind of early 2010s, big data was kind of on the rise, and a lot of people were talking about analytics, and I knew at least if I had pursued this path and it didn't work in baseball, I could get a job doing something else that was of interest. And so predictive modeling was of interest to me, and applying that in different industries such as tech or whatever it might have been was something that I could have pursued and made a decent living doing. While I was at college, I was a student manager for the baseball team there, and that was an incredible experience, learning more about the game, being around a high-profile Division I baseball program, going to College World Series, and just I have some really fond memories doing that, and applied to seemingly every baseball team, and did that for what felt like a number of years. I don't know how much it was in actuality, but struck out, no pun intended, a lot, and never made it past. I had one interview and didn't make it past the first round with one team, and then was discouraged. At that point, I had decided to go to grad school to study data science, further my background in math, statistics, computer science, knowing full well, hey, this is my last-ditch effort to break into the game. Went to the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference in Boston, hosted every March, and it was based on a stipend that I had gotten from school. Put my name in the resume book, and when I had arrived at the conference, I had gotten a couple emails from different teams, one of which was the Dodgers. So I met up with the director of R&D at the time, who I interviewed with, and that was kind of my way into the organization, or that was my path for getting an interview at least. So I think back on it, And that was like, I was ready to give up. I was ready to like move on and try to do something else. I kind of expected that that was going to be the case. I still like, I'm thankful, and I just feel incredibly grateful and lucky that Doug Fearing is his name, the director of R&D at the time, who took a chance on me, and yeah, really happy to be here now 8 seasons later.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to impart tonight was that to get a job for a professional sports organization, there's no cookie cutter method, right? There's no recipe that you follow. You don't go to this school, major in this, and then you get an internship here, and then boom, you're like working for a team. It's all varied, right? So like 3 perfect examples, and you take every front office executive, they'll tell you a totally different story about how they got there. So it doesn't matter what major you are, it doesn't matter what country you're from, it doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter where you're from geographically, it doesn't matter what you study. There's no time like right now that the professional sports world is there's no other time than right now in terms of accessibility that there's ever been before in Major League Baseball. And so Michael brought up Moneyball. And for those who don't know Moneyball, it's a book by Michael Lewis that was made into a movie starring Brad Pitt. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Not just because of Brad Pitt, but and it's a story of how a small market team, the Oakland A's, used untraditional methods to create a powerhouse team and to beat the teams that would spend tons of money. So actually it's a great way. It's not just a sports movie, but it's a movie about how to look at things differently and then how to apply that to the professional sports world. And out of that book, that movie, right, and I talked about this before, you had and I don't want to use this term, but nerds is not the right word, but you have people who didn't play professional sports now populating front offices, now are general managers, right? The 3 people who are sitting in front of you are not former professional athletes. Although I did have a stellar career here at CMC playing basketball. Look for my name in the trophy case over at the pavilion. You won't find it there because I was terrible. But at any rate, and that's what one of the reasons why we're here is to say, like, look, anybody can get in at any time. You just have to be right time, right place. I didn't realize that Emilee is a pioneer in our front office, in that she's the first person to be an analytics hire. Analytics is everywhere in baseball, right? So there she is, right? Autographs, pictures later. I didn't realize Michael Voltmer is a stalker of general managers. I didn't realize that either, which is good to know. I didn't realize that. Can you guys, so one of the reasons why I asked them to come with me. So my office, if you can imagine a baseball stadium, and behind sort of the dugout, there's a weight room, there's a kitchen with tables and chairs where we eat, there's a locker room, there's some offices, and there's a coach's locker, there's Dave Roberts' office, our manager. I'm lucky that I have an office downstairs. There's a video room, there's a batting cage, there's a lot of, we have an equipment office, laundry facility, but so I'm part of the downstairs group. But at every game, before the game, I see Michael and Emilee downstairs. During the game, I see Michael and Emilee downstairs. So can you tell us what you do pre-game and during the game to affect our team So, Michael, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. My title is the Director of Baseball Strategy and Information. I lead a team of 6 analysts that focus on in-game strategy. And I think it's a unique department, and I don't know of other teams that devote 6 people towards game preparation, advanced scouting, working alongside our major league coaching staff and helping them prepare for each game, trying to exploit weaknesses in our opponent and also layer on our own strengths from the personnel that we have in order to create advantages for that night. And so each night I will go down, and at this point, like, we have, it's not just myself, but others, members on my team are down there as well, talking to our coaches. But we'll go through our positioning recs, how we want to place our infielders, our outfielders, given the batter-pitcher matchup. What pitches should we throw that night? What's our best way of getting the opponent out, preventing runs? Like, if you were to just sum it up in 2 words, it's just how do we prevent runs? And then we also, talk to our hitting coaches too. We have a wing of what our approach should be at the plate, given what we expect the pitcher to do and what we expect him to throw to our hitters. Like, how should we approach? What should be our mental mindset? And what does the data say about that? And how do we communicate that to the players in order to create runs? For me, like, I started working on that in 2018, was kind of the first steps into the clubhouse, the first time I had access, and I've focused primarily on positioning and game calling and game preparation on the pitching side. And it's interesting looking back, and I credit our coaches, honestly, because we have a really open-minded, excellent coaching staff who are not afraid of implementing something that's odd or different or maybe outside the box, because if we're convicted in it and that is going to be an advantage for us, I think there's an openness and willingness to acknowledge that, we're all on the same team here. We're all have the same goal. So bridging that gap from upstairs, downstairs, analyst to coach, master's degree to former major league player, that hasn't been that much of a challenge, as much as one may think. And I think it's a lot having to do with our excellent coaching staff, who are just super willing and open to discuss new strategies with us.
I want to sort of add something to what Michael says is him and his team don't say, like, here, this is what we think you guys should do tonight, so follow this. These are some things we want to highlight. Here's some recommendations. You think about it. And then it's a discussion with the players, and ultimately the coaches and the players are the ones who have to execute, right? It's a really hard game. So whether they apply the information or use the information that they're given is ultimately up to the players and the coaches. So they can make recommendations about certain things, but there has to be buy-in from everybody, right? It's not just like people in different silos. Everybody has to be on the same page. So I think we have a really good group of personnel who is very open-minded to taking in all the information and collectively making the best decision. I don't want to have it out there that, Volt and his team just like, here, do this, and then we'll win, right? Because it's not like that.
Yeah, that's a good clarifying point. It is it's a conversation, it is a discussion, it's a group effort, and yeah, like the understanding that we're on the same team, we have the same goal, we're trying to, we're all trying to do the same thing here, is a helpful reminder, and Just as we may bring something up to say, hey, we think we should put our fielders here, if there's often pushback and a differing opinion, and we talk about it, and often we change our mind based on something else that our manager or some of our coaches may have seen. Something we know about the hitter and how he may be changing his approach that night, or we're going to change up our pitch mix. And with that knowledge, we have to acknowledge that the model or whatever is driving us to come up with our recommendations is going to be different. We have additional information now, and so as a result, we should pivot. And I've learned so much from our coaching staff, and it's been fun to look back on my own personal growth as a result of my relationships with them.
Emilee, can you talk about what you do downstairs and sort of pregame and in-game?
Yeah, so I work in a different department than Mike does. My department is performance science, so we have a focus on biomechanical data. So for those who maybe don't have exposure to what that is, it's basically understanding how the body is moving based on data collection and understanding the physics of the mechanics of the movements. And so, as I said before, my background is not in engineering, it's not in biomechanics, so I had to do a lot of learning on the job. But what I think that it does do is it's the largest data set that teams have ever worked with. So my background being in data science, I have kind of moved with where the big data is going. And biomechanical data is also unique and new in baseball in that relative to baseball, pitch data, TrackMan, things like that you see, it's a lot of data. But biomechanical data is a whole different bear. It's moving us into real big data that is like in the scheme of the world is big data, right? And so it's a whole different like ball of wax, and that challenge is something that our strategy department and as well as just our regular like analysts are also dealing with. But what I am doing these days and that I do before each game is I spend time directly working with our coaches and players trying to figure out the best way to leverage that information. And so instead of I these days do much less large scale big data analysis from like a modeling perspective and more of an interpretation perspective. So how do you go in and make this stuff usable to a player? How do I provide the context from what a player or a coach is thinking about to the people upstairs who need to actually go in and dive into this big data? So I see myself as kind of a bridge between those different goals. And so just in terms of my pregame routine or during game, like I said, I spend a lot of time directly interfacing with coaches and players. This type of data is as close as we currently get to having a measurable on mechanics, on the things that coaches are looking at, they're trying to work with different players. Every team at this point has it. If you've heard Hawkeye is kind of the buzz term, but Dodgers have been early adopters of that type of data, so we feel we're a little bit ahead of the curve, especially in fostering trust with the players being willing to use it and having the buy-in and the level of knowledge from our coaches that they also feel really comfortable leveraging it. And so providing context, gathering context, as well as providing them the information, it's so much data that it's difficult to just hand it over to a coach or a player and expect them to just have the time or the bandwidth to go use it. And so I serve as that bandwidth person in between, understanding, hey, this player is working on X, Y, and Z. We can dive into the measurables and see, exactly what the precision level. We have great coaches who I think have great eyes, and so it's not to necessarily, like Volt says, to override what they're working on, but it's to grant a level of precision to the types of problems that good coaches are already looking at and tackling. So I spend my time basically sitting in the cage with the hitters these days and remembering and listening to what they're working on, figuring out where I can provide them context, and having reports ready the next day in case there's something they want to dig in on or that they requested the previous night. During the game, can't use that stuff, so mostly I'm just trying to watch the game, listen in, think about the things. All right, I wake up tomorrow morning, what are the reports, what are the dives I need to do so that they're ready when I get in that day, when the players get in that day.
So a lot of this is new to me, right? So when I started 23 years ago, these positions didn't exist. So as she's talking, I'm actually learning a lot about their positions. So for Emilee, if you look at every single Dodger player, right, every body is different. every body, not everybody, but every body has strengths and weaknesses. Over a period of time, they are rested or they're tired. So what is that? How does the body, whether it's ready or it's tired, perform, right? So like I think of this sometimes about chopping down a tree, right? If you're going to chop down a tree with an axe, you have to hit the tree at its strongest point, right? Or you have to be at your strongest point to chop down the tree, or else you'd be like, if you're really close to the tree and you chop at it with a little axe like that, it's not going to come down, right? You need a big axe. You need to hit it out in front, and that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to impact the baseball at the body's strongest point, right? And so that's Emilee's job, is try to identify for every single player, where can they impact the baseball at the strongest point, whether they're tired or whether they're not tired, right? And so that's what Emilee's team does to sort of, make the Dodgers into the best team. And I want to say this. The Dodgers won 111 games last year, which is the most wins any baseball team has had since over 100 years. So 2 people who largely contributed to that success are right here, right? So I think they're doing a pretty good job. Obviously, it's like the players too, right? So it's like, it's not, you're not 51 wins, and you're 60, yeah. So it's not that, but like obviously they're doing a decent job. So, how are we on time? We're okay on time? Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my job, right? So I talked about Japan. I talked about how I got started. So I was hired to do research into Japanese players. And that was my main charge at the beginning of my career. And eventually we got a couple of Japanese players. And eventually I became their interpreter. And I started to travel with the team, sitting in some of these strategy sessions that we've talked about here, just as their interpreter. So I got to be like as close to being a player without being a player. And then the travel director left the position, and I was called in the office, and I was offered the job. And that was like 18 years ago. And so my job entails getting the team from one place to another. So whether it's airplanes, trucks, tickets, per diems, buses, equipment trucks, hotels, that's my area. So I kind of say like it's like a road manager, except it's not a rock band, it's a baseball team. And so Michael, we don't really call him Michael, we call him Volt. So Volt and Emilee, they travel with us from time to time. So our traveling party is about anywhere from 68 to 75 people. That includes about 30 players, 12 coaches, 2 to 3 PR staff, 1 to 3 baseball operations, travel guy, 3 equipment guys, 2 video personnel, broadcasters, engineers. We have our own like camera people that follow us around, backstage Dodgers, so you could see us in the life of a road trip. So it's a lot, right? We move quickly from one place to another all the time. I want, to the group that was here earlier, this is a repeat, but if you're thinking about a career in sports, I want you to consider the calendar. So a baseball season is about Valentine's Day till potentially the end of the World Series, which is in early November. So from that period of time, like essentially you belong to somebody else. So the work is very intense, right? There are a few days off, if any. If you have any days off, you are traveling. There is little time, unfortunately, for social activities, and that's a big downside, right? I'm married with 5 children. It's not a verbal typo. I do have 5 kids. They're 12, 9, 7, 4, and almost 2. And as I've grown with my family, the travel is become increasingly more difficult. I would much rather watch the Glendale Honey Badgers baseball 7 and 9-year-old team, play than the Padres and Dodgers, right, in San Diego, right? But it pays the bills. So I'm sort of in this position for what it is. That being said, I don't want to be negative about it, but my family, they're a Dodger family. My kids go to Dodger games all the time, right? My daughter has grown up going to spring training. She's grown up at Dodger Stadium all the time, right? She had a friendship with Vin Scully when he was alive, right? So like my boys knew Tommy Lasorda, right, before they passed away. So these are all very cool things that hopefully they'll remember for the rest of their lives. But anyway, I wanted to ask Emilee and Michael, the season, because it is so oppressive is maybe the right term, I don't know. What do you do to blow off steam, or what do you do during your downtime? Like, what do you do to get away from the game?
I think to Scott's point, I don't have that many hobbies outside of my job. That being said, I do love my job, right? So that makes it okay. My main hobbies are things like travel and hiking and camping, which, as you can imagine, can't be done the majority of the time during the year. You're predicated on you have to have cell service. I'll have to go camping somewhere with cell service and a laptop and a hotspot, or very narrow windows of the year, things like that. So, these are the sacrifices that I think, to Scott's point, you have to make. I wish I could list some other hobbies that don't have that caveat on it, but I do have hobbies, but you're beholden to the calendar, and I think everyone has to decide, is that worth it or not? And for me, there's a lot of my life where the job is my hobby, and I think that that might not be the case for everyone. It might not be the case forever, but if you can say that, I think it's what makes the season a little less oppressive and worth doing. So.
Yeah, I've been asked this question a lot, and it was easy before I worked in baseball because my hobby was baseball. Now that I work in baseball, I don't. This is like one of the hardest questions you could probably ask me, and because I really don't have like hobbies outside. Like it's a grueling 8 months out of the year, and now I have a wife and 2 girls under 3, and that's where all my time goes. And honestly, like truthfully, that's where I want to spend my time nowadays. Like when I have free time, I just want to be at home with the girls, and it's actually like a very fulfilling life. But I almost feel pressured to have a better answer to this question. Like I need to have hobbies, or I need to have something else along those lines. But the job is so enjoyable, despite the long hours. That it doesn't feel as bad, but at the same time, like I think what Scott's going for here, and for those of you in the room who are thinking about working in sports, it's not always easy. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. It's not always like, success, winning. Those things certainly help, but when things aren't going well, it's definitely a stressful job as well. There's not a lot of times to take a break or unwind or regroup or anything. You just got to keep your head down, and that can be really tough. So it's not for the faint of heart a lot of the time.
You brought up a really good point, and I wanted to touch on what's been your biggest, and I'll lead off with my answer. What during your career has brought you the most joy? And then follow that up by the biggest disappointment. So I'm gonna go, this question was raised to me during the meal. Other than winning this ring in 2020, which that's a completely different question that I'll talk about. In 2000, my biggest moment of joy during my career was 2017. Rewind to 2016, October. We are in Chicago, and we lose to the Chicago Cubs in the NLCS. 2017, we're a better team, and we're in the Chicago, same place, but 1 year later. Kike Hernandez hits 3 home runs in the deciding game of the NLCS. So we're we're early, right? So we're up like 10-3 or 7-3, or we're blowing them out. So we know we're going to win this game, and I go to our equipment manager, and like in the 3rd inning, right, which you shouldn't do because it's like bad juju. But I was like, hey, Alex, when we win this game, can I go out to the field and pass out T-shirts and hats on the field? And he goes, yeah. Meet me in the dugout in the 8th inning. Okay. So I change out of my suit, whatever, and I change in shorts and a sweatshirt, and I go down in my tennis shoes to the dugout in the bottom of the 8th inning. Before 2017, the Dodgers had not been to the World Series since 1988. Amazingly enough, I'm from Monterey Park, right? So, which has been in the news lately. So I'm from Monterey Park, went to school here. Other than living in Japan for a little bit, the only job I've ever had is working for the Dodgers, right? So I'm LA, born and bred. 2017, like a little boy, I'm in the dugout, and we get 1 out, right? And all of a sudden, I start to think about where I am, and like tears start coming down my face. I'm like, we're gonna go to the World Series, and here I am, like, gonna be on the field celebrating with these guys. 2 outs. Guy comes up, hits a line drive, Charlie Culberson catches the ball. We're going to the World Series. Tears coming down my face, I run out, and I start passing out T-shirts and hats. My wife and, at that point, 3 kids are in the stands, and unbelievable joy, right? And that's the reason why, at that moment, I felt like everything that I've ever sacrificed, everything I had ever done, all the times that I've been away, it meant something for that one moment. That was my biggest high, other than this World Series, which I'll talk about. My biggest low was this year, or was in October of this year. As I mentioned, the Dodgers won 111 games, powerhouse team. We won the division by how many games?
A lot, I don't know.
A lot, like 20-something games, right? Yeah. We boat raced everybody. And we lost to the San Diego Padres. And that, to me, I've never felt more low in my entire career. And it's not, and it ties to, you invest your life into something, you have such high expectations, and then it all comes crashing. Well, it all didn't come crashing down. It's like a slow bleed, and it's a slow death, right? You lose a game, you're like, it's okay, we'll win the next game. And then you lose, and then you're like, it's okay, we just win 1 game, and then we'll win the one after that. But it's like you start to like tip over, and it's slow, and then you start to think about 111 wins. You start to think about the group. You start to think about everybody in the room. You start to think about this group is not going to be together anymore. And it's just like, it's so painful. And it's not just painful because you travel with a team and all that, but it's just like everybody's in it together. It's them, it's the equipment guys, it's the trainers, it's all their families, it's the fans, it's every single person, right? So that to me was like the most disappointing point of my career was last October. So high and low.
And we can't say 2020.
You can say 2020, that's fine.
Okay. Is it, interestingly enough, I'd say it's hard to say 2020 was the biggest disappointment as well, but there was a significant juxtaposition, I think, when we won the World Series in 2020, which, you know, is everything you work for. It's the pinnacle of baseball. I could potentially spend the rest of my life working in baseball and never have that happen again. Never come close even, who knows? I know people who've worked for a long time and never experienced that, so extremely lucky to have been a part of that and be in the bubble as well, which was, I don't know, it was really tough for me. Like, it was 5 weeks away from my family. There was pretty much no going in and out of the hotel aside from the ballpark. I mean, it was a tough time for everyone in different ways, but anyway, like when we win the World Series, that is like everything you work for. There is definitely some element of like elation and celebration. But at the same time, like Justin Turner was pulled off the field a couple innings before, test positive for COVID. So there's like running through my head, I'm like, is JT okay? Who else might have it? Am I gonna be able to go home tomorrow? Like, I actually like, I'm sitting on the floor of Dave Roberts' office having an adult beverage after us winning, because there was no champagne celebration. There's no parade. And I'm talking to Mark Pryor, our pitching coach. I'm talking to Alex Slater, who's now one of our assistant general managers. We're talking about trying to find a rental car and drive from Dallas to LA tomorrow. And when I envisioned what winning the World Series was going to be like, this is not how it played out. So I've kind of mourned not being able to experience it in that way. We should be dousing each other with champagne. And I don't know, I was joking, like I need to download the Calm app or something, because it was a surprisingly tough time. And you know, after the dust had settled, I got home and I was able to just kind of rethink and actually enjoy, like think back fondly on the moment, but it was not without some difficulty, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer would be extremely similar to Mike's. I think you put it very well. So I've been, I'm going into my 11th season, but my 10 seasons with the Dodgers is we've been to the postseason consecutively all 10 years. We've won one World Series, which means I've experienced a devastating loss 9 times, right? And so I think, you get the taste of that. And then you also get the taste of like Scott was saying, 2017, the year we first went, how the highs are so high. And I remember Game 2, the NLCS, 2017. We're going to go up 2 games on the Cubs. Justin Turner hits a home run, go ahead, I believe. Alex Slater, now our AGM, body slams me into the wall. Just the level of emotion that you experience as a group is, I think, what we're all in it for. It's why sports is, I alluded to it earlier, but it's why sports is so special to me. And so those are the moments that make it all worth it. But 2020 was not in the bubble. I was, it was a special enough experience when we clinched and we were going. I got in the car, drove to Texas. I was there in the stands, but I wasn't there on the field. And I think, again, just echoing, like, that was the same exact bittersweetness of, like, what we're all in it for, the thing that we are all trying to feel together. We don't get to feel together. And I think the bittersweetness of that made it really difficult. I think, Scott, we're just jumping ahead to your 2020 question. But I'll also give just one slightly different answer. Just, I think because Volt put everything so well, is for me, I spent, many, many years working in an office context, sending information down through other people. And so these last few years, being able to work with the players and feel like I've gained their trust and have them come to me and feel like I'm doing a good job, that I am actually having some impact on what they're going out and doing, has been very rewarding for me. So I think aside from giving the same answer of wins and losses, I think for me in my career, that's been, I think, the most significant high for me.
You know, one of the things that, you know, just to sort of highlight what Emilee is saying, like, if you watch the Dodgers on television and you see whatever, everything that's going on the field, behind the dugout, we have a batting cage. I want you to imagine when next time you watch the Dodgers play or you listen to them on the radio, in that batting cage is Emilee. In the locker room before the game and during the game is Volt. So they're there as much as any coach, right? So you can almost assume that like a coach in uniform, they're like coaches not in uniform, if you want to think of it that way. I want to talk about 2020 and what that meant for me. Differing from what Michael said, I had my family with me at the Four Seasons resort in Dallas. And it was 5 weeks of living in a hotel where somebody else did your laundry, cooked your food, but you couldn't go anywhere other than the hotel grounds or the stadium. 2020 was obviously very different, right? My kids could do Zoom during the day, and when they were done, we could all go to the pool, right? But it was the pool every single day. They had activities, they had video games, and they had like little play areas. There's green areas at this resort. But, you know, I'm thankful that there were other kids there, that my kids and their kids, they played all the time. So in that respect, it was an awesome bonding experience for my family and the Dodger families. When we won, my family was there, right? And I think that's the huge difference between Volt and myself, is I was able to share that with my wife and my kids. I ran onto the field, and the first people that I hugged and kissed, of course, my wife and kids, and you know, obviously hugged players, not Justin Turner. But then I called my parents, right? And of course, like, I'm crying, right? And I called my parents, and you know, I talked to them over the phone. I called my sister, right? And everybody was crying. But that was my moment, right? That was the high of my career, obviously, is 2020. So people call it, was it, you know, Mickey Mouse Championship because we didn't play 162 games? No, that's a World Series championship, you know. We're going to get another one. So I'm very confident of that. How are we on time? Are we okay? Okay. At a certain point, we have to go to Q&A, right? When is that? Okay. I'd actually like to go to Q&A right now. Is that okay? Yeah, right. Would like to open it up to question and answer. Actually, before that, I didn't want to come out of here and not say thank you to some people. I want to say thank you to both Emilee and Michael for participating. They didn't go to CMC, right? I did. So I convinced them to come out here and convinced them that this was going to be a pleasant experience. Hopefully it is. I want to say thank you to Randy Town, who was the former baseball coach here, who greeted me and took me around. My ex-basketball coach, Ken Scalmanini, none of these people are here tonight. Diana Graves, who was a classmate of mine who also works here. And also to Ms. Priya, thank you for having us here. And thank you for hosting us. It's been great. There is a bobblehead on each table. And I want to give that to the person who's first alphabetically, last name at the table. So whoever you are, first alphabetically, please take that. Okay, then I just didn't want to come away without saying thank you.
Was that first alphabetically by last name or first
By
name?
last
'Cause-
name.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, we will now proceed to Q&A. Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers for tonight's conversation. If you're interested in asking a question, we ask that you come up to one of these two mics. We also ask that you please introduce yourself with your name and your class year.
Hi, my name's Aditi. I'm a sophomore. I have two questions. First, how do you think baseball analytics has evolved since Bill James? And like, how do you see it evolving with AI and ML and like the tech that we have? And two, how do I get a job in baseball? I'll take an office, a cubicle, first base, like, I'm open to anything.
I'll tee this one up for you. How has analytics evolved since Bill James? I think, well, there's a period of time where people like Bill James and the writers on Fangraphs, Baseball Prospectus, these public-facing blogs have, that's where the top-tier baseball research was placed. And I'm thankful for it because I learned a lot from it without necessarily having to do it myself. But there was a time where things changed and the data that was being analyzed shifted in the favor of the teams where a lot of the data is no longer public. So I think that's like one interesting distinction from when Bill James started is now like the gap between the public and the teams is as large as it's ever been. I think over the last 10 years, we've learned a lot about pitching. We've learned through TrackMan and Hawkeye and ball tracking data, we know very granular levels of data about how a pitch moves, its spin, and we can infer how valuable that is. Looking forward, I think a lot of the work that Emilee does, that is the future. I think we've learned a lot about pitching, and we're about to learn a lot about hitting, and we're about to learn a lot about how the body moves and what players can and can't do through how they position themselves. We're going to learn a lot about the bat and the bat path and the swing and some of these mechanical things that coaches have been focusing on for, since the beginning.
Yeah, I think that was well said. I think to kind of generalize, I've always seen the evolution of baseball analytics as basically trying to go one level deeper on what is causing the outcome. And so you think about using pitching as the example, ERA being the easy one, how many runs do you allow? I'm gonna throw out some fringy statistics here, but then you go, okay, Bill James era, now you use FIP, right? So now we wanna know a little bit more about the process of the pitcher. What kind of, fly balls does he give up, right? You go in one level deeper, you go to something like Sierra. It was like a, Bill James type measurement of pitcher performance meant to take out what the fielder's doing. And then you start getting into things like pitch characteristics. So how the pitch is moving is affecting what kind of batted balls that he creates. And so I think you just see the evolution of baseball trying to take one layer off and one layer off of understanding what's actually causing the end result. And I think to Volt's point, being able to know how the body is moving allows us to go one level deeper, right? So using the pitching example, we don't just need to look at how the pitch is moving. Now we can say, what is the pitcher doing to create that movement? Okay, that's with the hand. What's he doing now with his body to create that movement? And so I think the evolution of baseball over the years and where it goes in the future is all about trying to peel back those layers, because then you have better information, more precision in your information, and you know more about what's causing what. It's not noise anymore, right? If you have better data, you're measuring more, you remove the noise from the models that you have. And I think that's just kind of been the pursuit of baseball in what it focuses on and what's considered cutting edge.
So, you know, some of the stuff that Michael and Emilee just talked about may be foreign to some in the audience. I guess one thing that I want to impart upon this group is our front office is very cutting edge, and in order for us to win, right, and to win 111 games or to be consistently in the playoffs, we look to improve incrementally in all aspects of our operations. So the reason why they have jobs is we want to get better 1%, 2%. Little improvements, daily, monthly, yearly, so that all that daily improvement adds up to, you know, a big result at the end of the year. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, is that it comes from our leadership and our owners and our front office. They've invested the money into hiring bright people to sort of make the Dodgers the best that they can be. And now everybody else, I feel, is trying to catch up, right? So.
Quickly addressing the second question on how to get a job, to Scott's point earlier, there is no one way to do it. All three of us have different stories. If you're talking about analytics specifically, like a disqualifier, honestly, is if you can't code, there's not a lot for you to do. Like, it's kind of a harsh reality. But we need people with technical expertise. The data's too large. Like, we need people who can come in and automate things and come up with reproducible examples that we can put into our pipelines. I would say, like, be familiar with the public baseball research as a foundation. In the analytics sphere, it's always helpful to know about current events. I'll probably ask you questions about your favorite baseball team and what you would do if you were their general manager. You know, what else am I forgetting? You have anything else to add to that?
No, I mean, I just think, like, being diligent in the resources that you're accessing. So Teamwork Online is a place that jobs get posted. Teams will post their job listings and stuff. I think it's just about being aware of when those listings go up, trying to just kind of be in touch with that and, you know, apply, right? And I think, to Volt's point, the things to have on your resume, like coding, is going to be important, and just demonstrating awareness of where the industry is at, just to make sure that, you know, the resume in a pile will show up. There's a lot of other resources, you know, in like academics, like sports clubs and stuff like that. Winter meetings, like resume stacks, you know, Sloan Analytics. There's a lot of like conferences or events where you can get your resume into a pile, and those packets will go out to other teams. So anything like that, I think, is a pretty good way to just kind of have your resume in the cycle, in as many places as you can.
Just one last thing. I would say, like, find ways to do the job before you have the job. It's kind of a cliche. I'm sure other people would say it for different industries as well. If you have ways to stand out through projects in class, go watch the baseball team here, write a scouting report. Do you guys have a baseball team here? No? Okay, all right, good. So I would say, like, have, if there's, like, interesting questions you have baseball related, find the data. Go mistake your way into a project, publish it, write a blog, something. Like, have something that you can point to when we're looking through your application.
Get used to the answer no, and what is your reaction going to be to the closed door, right? How are you going to kick the door down? I was told that you get in and show what you can do. So get in, take any job, and show what you can do.
Hello, my name is Kristen. I'm a senior at CMC, and I'm on the softball team. And you know, what we do at practice is I just kind of go there and I swing and my coach watches me for like 3 minutes and he'll say like 2 sentences to me and I just kind of have to like figure it out on my own. So I was like, I really want an Emilee there. And I guess the game that I play versus the game that you guys are working with seems like just totally different games. And I was wondering, like, how do newer players who aren't as used to like fancy baseball analytics stuff, like how do they transition? And like, yeah, how do they take that? And then do you think we should be bringing your like fancy level of play to like the lower levels, like including Little League even, or if we should just play old school baseball and softball? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I think at the end of the day, you know, the point of having that Volt has made about having coaches who are really receptive to things and players who are really receptive to things is kind of step one. Like that's the layer you need to have. In my experience, the younger players who come in are just generally more accepting and aware of what is out there. And so younger guys who come in at least tend to have a baseline level of awareness and trust of what it is. Obviously, you still have to spend the time to convince them that, you know, it's like you want them to have ownership of their career. And so you need to spend the time, you know, explaining things to them versus some of the older players. Those are like older players who come in from other organizations tend to be the ones that we need to do the most trust work with and things like that. And I think that a large part of that, of my job has been figuring out how to cater the messaging and how to cater the level and type of information to what the individual needs and what's going to resonate most with them. And so I think that's a roundabout way of basically just saying that I think there is a ton of benefit. And at the end of the day, I think, yes, I think you should be using what analytics tools that you have as long as that you're using them in a way that also respects the realities of what the athlete is going to be experiencing on the field. And so when you can apply it, great, but making sure that there's that back and forth to understand the context that the coach and the player is going from, I think is what makes what we do work really well. Because again, even the same messaging that Mike said is that we're not trying to force things down their throat. You know, we're trying to empower them and give them more tools to do their job better.
So I'm going to take a different answer, but very similar to Emilee. But so I have my 7-year-old and my 9-year-old play baseball, right? So my 9-year-old boy, he's a catcher and pitcher and plays different positions. So he used to throw from right here, and I was like, buddy, I know you watch TV and you see guys who throw right here, and it makes the ball do different things, which is cool. But you should throw over here because it's better for your arm, number one, and this is how I think you should use your body. And you're gonna throw the ball harder if you throw from here versus here. So to a 9-year-old, I'm trying to explain biomechanics to him, right? Which, if I had Emilee come over to our house or come over to baseball practice, she can tell my 9-year-old how to be a better pitcher, be a more effective pitcher, use his body better. But then again, he's 9. So like, I just want him to have fun, and then like after the game, I get ice cream. So I think a lot of and we hear this all the time in our game, these concepts have already existed in our game, but we're just putting labels on them now, and we're getting more information and how to explain them in a more efficient way. So.
Hi, I'm PJ. I'm a sophomore at CMC. I'm on the baseball team, so we do have a baseball team.
Sorry, stereotyping a liberal arts school. There was some chance.
I'm also a Giants fan, so I'm glad you guys lost. Sorry, not sorry. But, so I know with, I'm sorry, I'm a diehard. I love Giants. So I know the stigma on baseball is typically like you have the old school guy with the chew in his mouth, whatnot. I know they can be sometimes pessimistic towards the analytic skills because, to be fair, like some of their jobs are being taken. But I'm just wondering how you guys relay all the analytical stuff to the older coaches and even the older players that sometimes aren't as trustworthy.
I think the first step when tackling a question like this is to just formulate a relationship. People are a lot more receptive to thoughts, feedback, new ideas if they trust you or if they have some sort of relationship with you. So if this was a situation I was placed in, I'd try to not even go there. Like, try to not even talk about the content that I may believe or have a differing opinion on. I would just try to, I don't know, like, find ways to spend time with that coach, breathe the same air, learn how they think about the game, and maybe pick my moment to have a conversation like that, but also just listen. And because while I'm like, my perspective may be data driven, there's still holes in what we can measure. I have to understand that there's differing levels of confidence in what's statistically significant, in what we can actually deliver on, and what we think like the likelihood of something happening in the game is. And I think over time, the more that I've spent with the coaches, is they're right more often than they're wrong. Like, this is still the major leagues. This is professional baseball. They've gotten to this point and they have enough experiences where they're really good at what they do. And I have to remember that. And I think it's just come to the forefront over time. And then like, let's have a conversation. I'll bring supporting evidence, try to explain in simple terms why you believe the way you do. And again, like I said it earlier, but remember that we're on the same team. We're acting and moving towards the same goal, and that's it shouldn't be adversarial. I know Andrew, our president of baseball ops, has always pushed for having different perspectives be able to speak freely in the room, and I think that's one of the ways, one of our competitive advantages is just having people like Emilee around in the clubhouse, in the cages, who can interface with the players, and there's no like, no, we're there. I'm sure there's other teams who would say no, Emilee can't go there, and like having different perspectives, able to sit at the table and have an open discussion, and hiring people who are open to those things have, I think, paid dividends for us.
Yeah, and sort of to highlight something that Michael is saying is it's people skills, right? It's the ability to listen and to have a conversation. And that's not something that's in a book, right? That's just being you, right? If you're a people person. And so I think that if you just listen to Michael talk and look at his face, like, he's an easy person to talk to, and he's a good listener, right? And that takes, I mean, I don't know how much talent that takes, but
Not much.
It's certainly like one of his biggest qualities. And so I think for both of you, your ability to be good listeners is one of your strongest traits, right? And to take that information, or take what somebody is telling you, and then, gather it in, and then how do you present? Maybe it's a difficult conversation back to the player or to the coach.
Hi, my name's Aiden. I'm also a part of the baseball team here at Claremont. And my question is, in what's becoming like a very data-driven analytical sport, is there still room for people like who maybe aren't as analytical and data-driven in terms of like, your guys' workforce? I myself am not someone who will, be coding or anything like that, but I'm very interested in working in an organization like you guys. So if you guys could just elaborate on that.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. There are opportunities for differing backgrounds, and something actually we've talked about a lot, thinking about how do we hire equitably, and at least in our front office now. I mean, we had a lunch and learn today, and I was thinking about this as I looked around the room. There's so many people who have STEM backgrounds, more or less, and it's important. It's going to be important for us as we continue to think about these things and the hiring process in general to consider people with different backgrounds. That's a whole separate talk probably, but I think if you were to look at our organization where there are people who don't necessarily have technical backgrounds, there's a lot in player development, there's a lot in scouting. So what I would say to you is play for as long as you possibly can. That is still a skill that's valued when thinking about who would make a good candidate in a modern front office. Learn a lot about the game. Be open to different perspectives, as we've talked about at length here, and have, I would say whether it could be coaching, it could be scouting, it could be developing skills. There's a lot to learn there, and that isn't necessarily overly technical, needing a software background or anything like that.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I think to Mike's point, we in performance science lean very heavily on our coaching staff, our minor league coaching staff in particular. We have an excellent group of minor league coaches, and also our scouting group as well, who are brilliant people, brilliant students of the game that we learn so much from, that we lean on heavily to be able to communicate with our players, to be able to implement good training plans, to be good evaluators, things that we could not do, and they're not ever going to code, right? And so I think that's, again, just to echo, certainly there's room for people in the game with that skill set. The more baseball acumen you have in that realm tends to be the better. And I also just think, secondarily, you don't have to code to kind of have a sense for where analytics and where the direction of the industry is going. And so just keeping up to date on those things and thinking critically about ways that can be applied. You absolutely don't need to code to be able to do that, right? But just to be on the cutting edge and know what's happening, I think goes a long way to being a coach that an analytics team would want to lean on.
Similar to coding, know another language is always opens doors, right? So for me, it was Japanese. Baseball, or non-English languages that are prevalent in baseball, obviously Spanish, Korean, Japanese would be the main languages right now.
Thank you for your questions. Once again, thank you to our guests tonight for their insights tonight. Hope to see you again at the AF soon. Let's go Dodgers!